In this video, I would like to talk a bit about a region of fantasy that is barely explored. By region, I mean a place that action of fantasy stories very rarely take place, because usually what we have is a fantasy town or a fantasy city or a fantasy forest. Sometimes we get some deserts, maybe some other thing like a swamp, sewers, things like that. But there's very few games that actually dedicate themselves, not only games, I'm talking, also about, books and other stories that dedicate themselves to make a story that is mainly, or they take place in their entirety underground or underwater. Because it's one of those things that really move the imagination, because we can imagine forests and swamps and cities and things like that pretty easily. You can find that, you can find how those things look like, and you can vividly imagine how they look like and the topography and geography of those places, because they are very open, right? When you are in the forest, you can go anywhere. You have trees on the way, but the trees are not forming a wall. You can actually walk around those trees. Same with a swamp. Maybe sometimes you'll get some area that is, let's say, it's an area that is underwater, and that area is very hard to traverse, but you can traverse it, and you can see through it. So it's not an area that is completely inaccessible for a character, right? And again, I'm not talking only about video games. I'm talking about RPGs, books, movies. I don't know how movies would be done with that, but books, let's say, and stories. I remember two stories that really captivated me, not in terms of how well the stories are written, but mostly where they were taking place. Because I don't think those stories are amazing, they're fine, mostly. One of them was The Legend of Drizzt. It's Dungeons and Dragons. If you don't know, it's a Dungeons and Dragons story. There's a lot of books in the Legend of Drizzt saga. I don't know, it's like 12, maybe more. At least I believe I read 11 of those books. And the first three are the best, not only in terms of story and characters, but also because of how unique they are. The first three books are happening almost exclusively underground. Within the Dungeons and Dragons universe, you have what is called the Underdark, right? I think it's called the Underdark, where you have just a series of caverns and deep underground topography. I don't know how to even explain it. The thing with underground areas, what is amazing about them, is that they are not open. They are definitely places where you either need to choose a pathway, or you need to make a pathway. If you are, let's say, a part of a race that is good at mining, stereotypically dwarves who will mine through those areas. But so they are kind of closed, but you can move through them at will, technically, if you know how to, but it takes time, and you also don't know where you're going if you're just mining through a place, digging through a wall. Sometimes you can have a material that you cannot dig through, or sometimes you can dig a bit too deep, just like in the Lord of the Rings, right, where the dwarves, they dig and dig down, and suddenly they went into a place that hosted the Balrog, which destroyed Moria, right? And yeah, Moria is also a good example. It's, the only parts of the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, takes place in Moria, but that part of the book was also fascinating to read, because it's a place that you can imagine it's very big, and it limits you a lot in terms of where you can move, but in the same time you can have a vastly big areas that are seemingly inaccessible. So, for example, you can have a big cavern, and it's not like you have 3 corridors. Let's say you have 2 corridors, but also there's a hole that goes, directly down, and also there is one tunnel that goes up and right, but you need, a rope or something else to climb that place. Or sometimes, if also, those underground places also lack light. Obviously it's underground, so we don't have the sun to illuminate. So they almost always create this sense of claustrophobia and the fear of what is below, what is below you, or what is lurking in those tunnels. You never truly know. If you, of course, I'm talking about from the perspective of the audience of that story, or a character in the story. And that what is fascinating, because if you write something that is happening in the forest, in a city, you can kind of expect things that are, and sometimes it's just a character needing to be. The character needs to be careful to not, in the city, for example, the character needs to be careful to not get into a street that is only one way, and there is some bandits, let's say, some criminals waiting for you to mug you, or something like that. The same with a forest and other places like this. And so in the first 3 books of the Legend of Drizzt, they are happening in the Underdark, and reading about the main character going through place to place is way different and way more engaging and interesting than it is reading when they travel, on the surface, because it's not just like one road that you just go through. There is a series of caverns and shelves, stone shelves, and then you have spiders, you have different things. Sometimes you go to this place, sometimes you turn to the wrong corridor, to the wrong tunnel. There's a dead end, so you need to go back. It's way more interesting. It's very interesting. It's one of those things that really move your mind, and it is very similar with the Metro series, at least with the 2033. I read 2033 and 34, but I barely remember anything from 2034. However, 2033 was one of those things where really, it was happening. If you don't know, it's happening in the Moscow Metro. But it's a post-apocalyptic story that is happening in the Moscow Metro. And since it's happening in the Metro, it's happening underground. But it's underground for, the post-apocalypse, is not happening, but lasts for so long. Then it's not just, you have a tunnel and you have the stations and nothing else. It's not like that. You have many other corridors, and those stations, it's not just people, a station, it's not just a place where people stand and wait for the metro to arrive. I don't know where you live, if you're listening to this, but in metro stations, I've never been in Moscow, but in Paris, in the metro in Paris, a metro station could be huge. It can be very big, and it can have a lot of different corridors and very convoluted ways and tunnels that lead to like a shopping center or to a different to a different completely station, even though it's in the same place, but you can move to a different line of metro and this on the same station, but the line is in a different elevation level. It can be under your station or above your station, and because of that you need to travel up or down. The verticality is verticality and the unknown of what is at certain place, at certain point, and where to go next. The confusion it causes makes for a very fascinating story. I mean, not story, but a fascinating setting to go around, because traveling in stories is something that is very much underused. What I do in RPGs, for example, is that I never ever skip and fast travel players from place to place. If a player wants to move somewhere, I make it as uncomfortable as it can be in in the universe. So if it's a very long journey between two cities, they will feel that. They will feel that it is very long and it is dangerous. Probably they will run out of the supplies. Sometimes there might be something happening. Let's say there is one city is closed, so you need to cross the river, and to cross the river you need to go through that city, but that city is closed, so you need to look for the bridge. But then it turns out that the bridge is very overcrowded and something is happening. There are events happening that the journey and the travel is very is something that the players needs to think about, and because of that they will think twice or thrice even every single time they want to move from place to place. And I'm talking about it because traveling underground is this, but on steroids, in terms of how your audience, because from the perspective of RPGs, your player is the audience, right? But if you write a story, then your audience is the audience, right? Someone who reads your book or watch your movie or TV show or play your video game that you put your story in. And just the journey itself can be fascinating, and the underground setting can not only you can very much it helps you for example, if we are talking about a non-linear story, so a video game or an RPG, because if you write a book, then you decide where the story is happening. Like, you don't need to think about what is in this place or that place. But let's say you're creating a story for a video game or a RPG or something more interactive, where someone can decide where are they going. Then the underground places, they can be confusing, but that there is a charm. There's a charm with that, the confusion. However, it's actually much easier for you to design, because you don't need to design a giant plane of things. You just have multiple paths, pathway here, a tunnel here, two tunnels here, and it also forks in that place. Then you have a crossroad in that place, but then some road goes down, some road goes up. Why do we need to go down? Maybe we want to go up, but we have no way to go up because we have no rope or no climbing tools. We have no climbing gear. Or for example, it's very dark and you play a race. The character plays a race that doesn't see underground. Yeah. So the Legend of Drizzt and the Metro series are good examples, and the small part of the Mines of Moria and the Lord of the Rings, where you have this confusing labyrinth of elevation of basically 3D, right? Because what underground areas give you is the ability to move in all directions, not only on the flat plane. Even when you have like a surface level that is very mountainous and hilly, it's still very open, and you can actually do it's very open, and you can do a lot. You can see a lot, and you can plan your journey by seeing what is around you. which is not happening in the underground, in the Underdark, let's say, because it's dark, and the moment the tunnel turn, you don't see what is at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, so that's like a small tidbit I wanted to talk about, which is too small for the main channel, and I couldn't make a comprehensive video about it. And I also don't want to mess up my algorithm, so I just put it here if you want. Yeah. Next video hopefully will come next weekend. The reason why it took me again 4 weeks to make that video, the last one, is that I had that different video planned, and then I changed my mind, which I know it's not good. I should not do that. But I had a video planned. I already started writing the script, but then I was like, do I really want to make that video? Do I really? And then I decided not to. And then I decided I needed to decide what is the next video, and then write the script again. And yeah, that's why it took so long. But I already have planned 5 videos ahead right now, so I will not make this. I will not make this this mistake again. Okay. So, see you on the main channel on the next weekend. Bye.